I don't know about you, but I roll with Stafford. This is RamView.
It's hot out there, but let's blow them off the line of scrimmage. Headline,
Live from the Ram Cave, I'm Joe Terodian, and this is RamView, the August 23rd, 2023 edition, brought to you by Kistler Law Firm. Injured in an auto accident? Need help? Got questions? Call Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. That's Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. And check out KistlerLawFirm.com. That's one word, KistlerLawFirm.com. Kistler Law, they've been fighting for you since 92. And by Temple City Auto Repair. Having some auto issues, get yourself some John and Henry at TempleCityAutoRepair.com. And of course, by Granite Ridge Christian Camp, a place where your life can change. Now, the following is going to reek of desperate dead period material, but we're going to talk a little bit today about the Rams offense, the offense, talk about Matthew Stafford. We're going to talk about that bad matchup in Week 5 against the Eagles. And we're going to look at some USC Trojans who wore the horns and played quarterback for the Rams. But before we get that, we wanted to clear some desperate dead period material off the boards. And let's start with Sam Darnold being named backup for the San Francisco 49ers. That's not the desperate dead period material. The desperate dead period is a proposition that was floated out there on Twitter that or X that Trey Lance would be a guy for the Rams to go after if they only had to give up a 5th-round pick, and that he could somehow lead the Rams to the promised land. I don't dislike Trey Lance, but I thought it was ironic as I was prepping today's show that someone saw him as replacing Matthew Stafford next year. And maybe Trey Lance isn't a bust, but do you really think next year he's going to be ready to replace Matthew Stafford? And if not, what's Stetson Bennett for? I don't know. Just throwing it out there. Also, another desperate dead period material, as if there's not enough to talk about in the NFL, has Aaron Donald going to the Browns in some 3-team deal. Steeler fan Rob, who lives in Missouri, bro, if you're watching the show right now, you need something more. If you're going to send me a pre-dawn text, wake me up. I get a text from Missouri before the sun comes up, and I'm seeing Aaron Donald going to the Browns just because they've maneuvered some salary cap. I need a little bit more than that, bro. Okay, let's get to some decent stuff around the NFL, some legit stuff. Jonathan Taylor is on the block. This happened Monday before that great Commanders, Skins, Ravens game. Jonathan Taylor has been given permission to seek a trade. But really, when I see Jonathan Taylor, I just see, it's the future of all these running backs. No one is going to give them that second contract for any significant dough. In fact, running backs in the future should all look a little bit more like Deebo Samuel. He's the future. I call them Lenny Moores. If you're familiar with the Colts star running back flanker from the 50s through the 60s, Lenny Moore, he's a Hall of Famer. Go check out his highlights. He ran the ball, he caught the ball, and he was really a hybrid player before his time. And that's what the running backs coming up are going to be like. If you're a great running back right now, learn how to catch and learn how to run pass routes. Yeah, learn how to block, but learn how to catch and learn how to run pass routes, because the feature back is going the way of the dodo, unless your name's Eric Dickerson. And again, I think I brought this up a few months ago. How awesome would it have been if the Rams had any real imagination? Any team had imagination back in the 80s. If Eric Dickerson out of the I formation suddenly went in motion and lined up in the slot, what would that have done to defensive DCs everywhere? Just out of the blue, he just motioned out, went into the slot. Big guy like that, built with the height of receiver, had decent hands, of course, the speed to burn. What would you have done with Eric Dickerson nowadays? I have a story from when I was covering high school football. This is 1,000 years ago. There was a running back at Arcadia High School, played varsity all 4 years. He was in school 3 years, well over 1,000 yards. His name was Darius Bailey. He was a good running back for the area. Might have had some college hopes, but maybe the grades weren't there. But everyone used to get ready for a Darius Bailey, and he was an I-back playing for the Arcadia Apaches. And I remember they were playing Temple City, one of our local teams here, which was a good program in those days, and had a really good DC. And out of the blue, Bailey just motions right out of the I formation and goes into a slot, and you see the TC coordinator. You see he's frantic. No one saw this in film. No one had seen it before, and it just created all kinds of havoc for the defense in that game. And this is what a guy like Dickerson could do. This is what a great running back can do now. And honestly, this is what they should be thinking about. Your running back should look like Deebo Samuels in the future. Running backs need to know you're not going to get your payday if all you are is a bell cow. Even if you're Derrick Henry, who can do a lot of things, but you better be able to catch the ball and run routes. Oh, and by the way, block. Just something to think about. When I wrote my first book, Tangent Dreams, one of the teams being played, I had to create something. The advantage of writing a fiction book. So I created a fictional offense called the Bone Spread, a hybrid of the wishbone and the spread offense. So I called it the Bone Spread. And really what it was, what I envisioned for the Bone Spread was an offense without running backs, just a bunch of receivers who could line up at running back, run between the tackles if they had to, but just it allowed the team a lot of options in terms of what it was going to do offensively. So I called it the Bone Spread. And really, I really think that is the future of the NFL. I don't see a pendulum shifting. I think I could see a pendulum shifting back to a fullback, that as these defenses go light to guard and coverage, there will be room for a heavy back to maybe carry the ball every now and then. But you got to be diverse. You got to have other skills if you're going to be a running back. Again, a Lenny Moore type, which is where the NFL is going. I thought that was just interesting studying that, looking at Jonathan Taylor and knowing that he wants his dough. He might not get it, the dough that other running backs have gotten in this past. Looking at other NFL news, it's no bueno between Nick Bosa and the 49ers right now, which in the end, I hope he does break the bank. And I hope it puts the red and gold in cap hell. I'm thrilled about that. If for some reason Brock Purdy isn't the guy, for some reason the odds catch up with Mr. Irrelevant 2022, and he becomes just a guy in the NFL, and the 49ers are already done with Trey Lance, and then they give all this money to Nick Bosa, that 49ers Super Bowl window just shrinks even more with all the mileage building up on their team, Trent Williams, George Kittle, and even Bosa himself, and even Deebo Samuel, and Christian McCaffrey. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Bosa's in the 28 rock range, and Frisco might not need him in week 2 against the Rams, but they will need him in week 1 against the Steelers, because I think the Steelers are a solid team. We just don't know completely about Kenny Pickett yet. Completely. I think he plays pretty well. Chris Jones, in the last year of his four-year 80 Rock contract, is still holding out. There is stuff on Twitter today, X, saying that he'd be willing to hold out until week 8. He's seeking, and as the market says, he wants Aaron Donald money. According to Spot Track, he estimates that he's worth 32 rocks a year. That is Aaron Donald money. And you have to wonder what the Chiefs are thinking because yeah, he's a great player. But what do you do with him? I mean, in the end, as he gets older, he's heading into his 7th or 8th season right now, actually his 8th season. Do they think they've gotten the best out of him yet? Not everybody's Aaron Donald. And he's at the prime. He's asking for his money at the right time. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out with Chris Jones, especially when you look how deep the rest of the AFC is. And it really will be Patrick and the Miracles. They'll have to be putting 35 on the board every week, which I think they're fully capable of doing. Other news, Antonio Brown was issued an arrest warrant for not paying his back child support. This is going to end up like something out of Shakespeare. Let's see. NCAA, college football's around the corner. Jim Harbaugh Michigan has self-inflicted a suspension on Harbaugh for the start of this season, and the idea that the NCAA is questioning Jim Harbaugh or anybody on credibility has all the credibility of Ted Kennedy and Joe Biden questioning the character of Clarence Thomas, right? I love the games Michigan decided to suspend Harbaugh for. East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green. Oh, yeah, that one hurts. I wouldn't even have suspended him for that. I would have told the NCAA to pound sand. The NCAA is so corrupt, right? College football's Thunderdome right now. There are no rules, and it's all about the corruption of the NCAA itself because they brought it about. So I say let it burn and let these teams do what they want. They are professionals as long as they treat the student athlete well, and they didn't. So let these schools do it and let the NIL and all these things work itself out. But it's great to see that kingdom come to a topple, right? Again, not ready for the college football season that starts this Saturday. Florida, Utah, I am interested. I am partial to Cam Rising. I hope he plays. Hope he's back from that knee injury. And, of course, USC is playing San Jose State. I'm not worried about the outcome as much as I am. I just want to see Caleb Williams play. He is eye candy on the football field. Late news back to Monday night, Washington, Baltimore. I think, everyone caught up with us. That's why we watch preseason games. We watch preseason games because players are fighting for their lives. They're fighting for their careers. John Harbaugh said this, and it was really great to hear. Now, it's also interesting because a talk show yesterday morning actually talked about how well Troy Aikman and Joe Buck did. I'm hesitant to say Joe Buck because I'm thinking Midnight Cowboy, but they did really well in the sense that they did know who all the players were, and that really stood out to me. I'm not a big fan of that team, but they did know who all the players were. It looks like they were prepped. And one of the things I've noticed about this preseason, all across the league, has been the pathetic job of the game announcers for these preseason games, not letting you know who's on the field. Hey, go back to the old days. Bob Starr calling Ram games. He was the best at setting the field, letting you know that you're listening on the radio, who's on the field, who's where. It doesn't take that much. It's your stinking job. Learn who the players are, even when they're UDFAs, because it's worth it. That's why it matters. When you act like it doesn't matter, and of course the fans aren't going to click on. They just don't care. And don't stick Kate Scott with us. Give us somebody who's prepared, who has a professional voice. And Troy Aikman and Joe Buck made that game between Baltimore and Washington that much more interesting, and it was already an interesting game. Speaking of which, Sam Harrell, really seems like the Taxkins do have a quarterback that won't allow them to be a cakewalk. He can make plays. Now, what's his high end? I don't know what his high end is, but I was impressed watching him, and so I don't know if the Taxkins are going to be a cakewalk going forward. And speaking of the Taxkins, keep an eye on Josh Harris, the new owner. Everyone's making a big deal about the botched handshake between him and Joe Buck. Blow it out of the water. Who cares? They're talking about what he wore. He's wearing a polo shirt, probably with a chili cheeseburger stain on it somewhere. The thing about Josh Harris, besides being a bazillionaire, is he's an old school fan. And an old school fan who now owns his childhood team. And I'm not making any promises here or even a prediction, but something to think about is that you might be hearing the song Hail to the Redskins again. And wouldn't that be awesome if for any other reason than to create that special drama that we all want to see everyone get apoplectic about, talking to Native Americans and some of the Native American coaches, they're not fond of much these days, but one of the things they do get really frustrated about is white liberals telling them how they should feel about the name Redskins. Not that all Native Americans like the name, but more have less of a problem with it than most that dislike it. And they just don't like white liberals telling them how to feel, or just change the name to the Washington White Liberals, but we'll see. Anyway, keep an eye on Josh Harris. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Baker Mayfield named the starting quarterback for the Buccaneers. Good for Baker Mayfield. I hope he does well. Richard LeCount III, former Ram, signs with Tampa Bay. So good. He's getting work. I'm excited for him. We talked about the Browns and that crazy trade proposal that's being floated around, rumor on the internet. Myles Garrett did restructure his deal and added another 12.8 rocks to the Browns salary cap. I don't know. That's always a good sign when you see a player of that caliber do those things. And then speaking of salary and contracts and stuff, watching Jacoby Brissett, he didn't play super well on Monday night, but he's in his 8th season. He's with his 5th team. He was a 3rd round, 91st pick overall to North Carolina State by the Patriots. We know he kind of rose into prominence a little bit because he played fairly decent during Deflategate suspension for Tom Brady when the NFL said, hey, let's give Tom Brady, the 40-year-old quarterback, 4 weeks off to start the season. Like, that'll really hurt him. And Jimmy G played, and of course, Jimmy G got hurt. Brissett came in, played well. His stock rose. The Colts made a deal for him, and we know how all that went forward. But Brissett's never become a starting quarterback. He's a backup guy, 8th season, 5th team. But in his career, he's thrown 48 touchdown passes, 23 picks, okay? He's made nearly by the time this season is over, he'll have made nearly $51 million. $51 million. Chase Daniel played less than that, and he made $41 million in his NFL career. I tell you, if I could go back and do it all over again, my aspiration would be backup quarterback in the NFL, right? You don't need a big arm, maybe some intelligence, decision-making. You got to have the college career, of course. But, man, what a gig to play 8 to 10 to 12 years in the NFL, not take the beating, get the pension, and then because you're a quarterback, the money you're going to make. Josh Johnson, the guy who can't even hang on to a second round or a backup position. He's usually 3rd string or practice squad. Josh Johnson, who played fairly decent for the Ravens on Monday night, just in all his floating around, he's made close to $10 million. So, yeah, let's be a backup quarterback. That's what I want to be. Ram news, not much new Ram news. They're in Denver to play the Broncos. But in regards to week 1, I know some folks are out there really think the Rams have a shot up in Seattle against the Seahawks. I've been one that believe that they don't. Seahawks wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba had a wrist fracture. He's already had surgery, and he's going to be out the first month of the season. Now, dare we dream, but they still have to figure out a way, the Rams do, to get to Geno Smith. We know that. They need to get a pass rush, but that's just one less weapon, okay? You got DK Metcalf, you got Tyler Lockett, you got Noah Fant, and then you got Kenneth Walker, and you got Zach Charbonnet, and you got some a developing offensive line. And I know I've already broke this down, and I put this game in the win column for the Seahawks, but things change. And if this Rams defense can somehow develop, as you start looking at it again and again, you start thinking maybe they won't be as horrid as we think. I think they're going to have a rough start, and I think by the second half of the season, they're going to be fine. But what if, right? If the Rams find a way to steal a game in week 1 against Seattle, and as my friend Steve Ramirez thinks they could steal a game in Cincy if Joe Burrow doesn't play, what if they figure out a way to do that, picking up some cheap wins, and then as the back half of their schedule opens up, they might have something. They really might be that team that could get 9 wins or 10 wins. So just, again, great thing to start speculating on. All right. Ram news. Just breaking down the positions here. And I wanted to talk about Matthew Stafford. You know, we spend a lot of time talking about Stetson Bennett. I'm kind of done with Brett Rippon, not that I hate him. But Matthew Stafford, again, completely ignored. People are rating Tua Tagovailoa ahead of him. They're rating Kirk Cousins ahead of him. They're rating Dak Prescott ahead of him. Previous years, they were putting Kyler Murray ahead of him. This is Matthew Stafford. He's got 330 touchdown passes, 52,000 yards. I know he's 35, but look who how old the quarterbacks are that we've been talking about the last few years. A couple of 40-year-olds and Brady and Aaron Rodgers. He's 35. He's going to play this season at age 35. And he's come back from difficult seasons before. He's had 3 seasons in his career where he's been injured. The previous 2 were after his rookie season. He only played 3 games in 2010. And then he comes back in 2011 and he throws 41 touchdown passes, and his team went 10-6. That's not bad, right? And then he didn't miss a game from 2011 through 2018. In 2019, he played in only 8 games. Comes back in 2020, throws 26 touchdowns with a bad Detroit team. And a year after that, he throws 41 touchdowns, and the Rams win a Super Bowl. And this was before the whole Trey Lance thing came up. Right now, Matthew Stafford's looking really good. He is throwing the ball well. I saw it. He's in shape. He's got no punts. He looks really good. Now, here's the other aspect about Matthew Stafford that you want to get excited about. Is Matthew Stafford is only making 44 rocks this year. He's only making 44 million. Next year, he's a 40 rock cap hit. And in 2025, he's a 38 rock cap hit. Now, man, that's a lot of money. It's not a lot of money when you see that NFL quarterbacks are moving into the 50 mil to 60 mil range right now. And the Rams have an elite, experienced quarterback who, if we can keep him healthy, boy, as the salary cap of the NFL continues to escalate, his salary is at 40, 38. And if he's still with the team in 2026, it drops even down to 36.6 that he's making. He can be bought out at that point for $18.5 million. The Rams, he really puts the Rams in a great place. If he can have that extended back half of his career, can they keep him upright? Can they keep him healthy and avoid the disasters that they did last year? And you got to figure, if there's some disasters this year, there's a lot of cap space to go out and get some better offensive linemen if they need that. If his arm is sound and his brain is sound and he's not getting beat up, really, it's kind of exciting when you think about Matthew Stafford going forward. And I'm tired of seeing him get overlooked, right? And so we should see him, barring he gets hurt, barring any federal or state shutdowns to implement fear and take away hope. He should have a great season this year. And if the NFL stays on progression, the salary cap will grow and he'll have room. The Rams will have more room under the salary cap. So think about that. You're pretty blessed with Matthew Stafford. Stop thinking about tanking the season. There's opportunity here. Cam Akers, he was another one that came to mind. I haven't talked much about him because it's easy to talk about the stars. It's a little harder to do some investigation and talk about Ronnie Rivers and Royce Freeman and those guys, right? And Zach Evans. But Cam Akers is exciting because he's never had 200 carries in his NFL career in one season. He's never played 400 snaps, right? His most snaps he's ever played is 367. And he hasn't really been utilized as a receiver. So again, I think I've said it before, the Rams need to pound this dude. I'd love to see Akers get somewhere between 250 to 275 carries this season, and then let him walk for a comp pick. If the Rams offensive line is better or solid or competent, Akers is more than a competent back. He's going to really build up a little bit of a market for himself, and he won't get the money he thinks he's going to get. No running back does, but you could let him go and get a decent comp pick. And the Rams don't need a great running game. All the Rams need is a competent running game. And then any carries or snaps Akers doesn't get should go to Kyren Williams, because he does a little bit of everything. There's a reason you draft this guy in the 5th round a year ago, is because he can catch the ball. He got 9 passes last year. He can scoot a little bit, and he does block in the backfield. So he runs a little light. He's 5'9", 194. But when I see him, the guy that pops into mind, and I might be going into the weeds here, and I don't want to turn anybody off. I had a long opening before I started talking about the Rams. But when you look at Kyren Williams and the kind of player he is, the guy it makes me think about is a guy named Kevin Falk out of LSU, who etched out a 13-year career with the New England Patriots. He was on all those early Super Bowl teams. He was also on that team, those 2 teams that lost to the Giants. He played from 99 through 2011. I think that's 13 seasons. He's a little smaller, actually, in height than Williams, but he was listed at 5'8", a little bit heavier. He was listed at 202 at the end of his career. But that's where I see Kyren Williams. Maybe he's going to be our version of Kevin Falk, because he can catch the ball. He can play special teams. He can run a little bit. He can block. Kevin Falk was an amazing piece that the Patriots had for a number of years. He was a guy they counted on. Obviously, you play 13 seasons with Bill Belichick. He wasn't Matthew Slater, strictly a special teamer. He contributed to that offense, and he had a number of catches and carries, and he had those moments. And he was also probably a great culture player. And, Kyren Williams coming out of Notre Dame seems like a good kid. He could be a culture player. And I wouldn't be surprised if in a few years, if Kyren Williams doesn't get hurt, if he understands what his role is in this league as a fifth-round undersized back out of Notre Dame, that he could be the last guy standing in this running back room in a few years. We could be still talking about Kyren Williams as opposed to Cam Akers, who moved on, Zach Evans, who moved on, and Ronnie Rivers, who moved on. Kyren Williams might be a guy that sticks around for a while if he recognizes his role and he develops as the culture player that is a good guy to have in the locker room, like a Kevin Falk. And so that really interests me about Kyren Williams. We haven't seen him play much, so I'm anxious. I think he did field a few punts last week, so adding to his versatility. Wide receivers, we talk about Van Jefferson, Scal, Robinson, Tyler Johnson. Of course, we've talked about that might be it for Lance McCutcheon. But another guy that interests me is Austin Trammell, who I've written off thousands of times. Yeah, Austin Trammell. Think about this. It's the 23rd of August, and I know no one has to be cut until the end of August because they've extended that. But think about this. Austin Trammell is short, and he's slow. He ran a 4.6 40 after his senior year, I think, at Rice. And then he's 5'10", 180. And, sometimes that 5'10", 180 stuff in the NFL for a receiver or an offensive player is more like 5'10", 180 in cleats and helmet. He's probably more like 5'9", 5'8", right? And so I'm just interested, why is he still here? I think he's still here is because Sean McVay sees value in him. Do I think he's going to make the final roster? I don't. Do I think he's liable to wind up on the practice squad? Yeah, if he doesn't get grabbed. But I think Sean McVay sees value in him. Probably he sees himself. I don't know. But he sees some value in him that if there's something that happens on this roster with an injury, Austin Trammell could be brought up from the practice squad because you're looking at a 5'10", 4'6" dude. He's not Danny Amendola. He's not Wes Welker. But he might be an incredible simulation. And so it'll be interesting to see how things develop with Austin Trammell because, I think he's got more to offer than Lance McCutcheon. I don't know. He's not going to be on the final roster, but if he passes through waivers, no one claims him. I think he ends up on the practice squad, and through injury or just attrition during the year, you could see him back on the active 53. Tight end, been talking about Davis Allen, Hunter Long, but again, another look at Tyler Higbee, who I've written off. Remember, Tyler Higbee is a fourth round, 110th overall selection in 2016. He's 30 years old. He's going into his 8th season. He looked tired last year. He looked beat up, but he caught 72 passes last year because there were a lot of checkdowns last year, right? A lot of checkdowns, right? Career-wise, he has 386 catches, something like 30 touchdowns, and he's a solid blocker. But I do think this is his last hurrah. He looked big, not fat, but big at camp when I saw him running about 6'6", 255. That's a big dude. That's a dude that could lay a Brock. And so I'm anxious to see how this last year plays out. I can't see the Rams giving him another contract. Bryson Hopkins, another fourth rounder, 136 in 2020 out of Purdue. He's only had 8 catches. He had 4 catches in the Super Bowl, and he had that great block on the seal on the jet sweep that Cooper Kupp ran on 4th down. But he's going to have an off-the-charts year to warrant a second contract. I kind of like the guy, but most likely this is his last hurrah. And I think he's going to go the Gerald Everett route, although he's got to show more because Gerald Everett did show a whole lot more than Bryson Hopkins. I'm rooting for Bryson Hopkins. Offensive line, Logan Bruss is back already. He was listed as day-to-day, playing through that ankle injury. Mike McAllister's getting all the snaps right now in the games at center. So we don't know. I don't know anything about Brian Allen versus Coleman Shelton. And we talked about Avila, Tremaine Ankrum, Alaric Jackson. But again, what bears mentioning is the guy who's played 116 NFL games out of 130. and he started 116 games, is right tackle Rob Havenstein. What value, right? Second round, 57th overall, 2015, heading into his 9th season. Havenstein, 6'8", 330. The Rams have gotten more than their money's worth out of Havenstein. I hope when he starts to slip, it's not this year, because we really need him to play well this year. But he gives you no reason to think that he won't play well. He has been a rock and an anchor. He did last time I think he had any kind of an injury was back in 2019. He has played really well. He's been underrated, and he's not going to get talked about as a right tackle, especially with Andrew Whitworth playing left tackle. But Rob Havenstein, we don't talk enough about him. And here was something I noted, that in terms of the Rams drafts, did you know the Rams didn't draft Creed Humphrey? Oh no, gosh, the greatest Ram who never played for the Rams. But starting in 2014, look at how the Rams just picked off starters in all these drafts. Aaron Donald in 2014, Havenstein in 2015, Higbee in 2016, Kupp in 2017. Where they land right now this season, Noteboom and Brian Allen. But, without Noteboom and Brian Allen, the Rams don't go to the Super Bowl or probably win the Super Bowl in 2021. They were drafted in 2018. The 2019 draft, Taylor Rapp, Darrell Henderson, Greg Gaines, David Edwards, Nick Scott, they're all gone now, but they all contributed and played and started. Many of them started that Super Bowl in 2021. In 2020, right now, you've got Akers, Jefferson, and Tremaine Ankrum, who I erroneously said was drafted in 2019, but they're all looking to be starters this year. 2021, Ernest Jones. 2022, Kobe Durant. Every year, this is how you keep your team. You sustain without massive injuries like they had last year. This is how you sustain a team going forward. Blasting through some of the defensive line, we know Bobby Brown, Aaron Donald, Kobe Turner. I think some of these down linemen will play better once they're playing alongside Aaron Donald, or they'll flash a lot better. Ernest Jones at middle linebacker. But the guy that I'm keeping an eye on, and I'm not really high on Christian Rosemore or Jake Hummel. I don't hate those guys, but I really want to see Jaden Woodby develop. He was the UDFA out of Boston College, the heavy safety. He didn't grade well week one. He only had 26 snaps of preseason in the first preseason game, and he didn't grade well. But he got 44 snaps this week, which tells me the team wasn't ready to write him off. They wanted to see how he would do, and he graded well, very well in coverage. He runs about, 6'2", 225, something like that, 228, and a coverage off-ball linebacker. What a perfect compliment to Ernest Jones. Now, is he ready now to start? I'm not saying he is, but just remember, this team won a Super Bowl with Troy Reeder at linebacker. It's not a high threshold to become a starting linebacker for the Rams. Roseboom's never played, I don't think, a defensive snap in the NFL, and I think Hummel's played one or two. Interesting where Jaden Woodby could be. I could be completely wrong, but I kind of like him. Everyone's worried about the edge, and that's probably the only thing that's really got me worried. I kind of like the cornerback room of Durant, Witherspoon, Tomlinson, Rochelle, and Kendrick as a backup. That doesn't sound bad to me. Fuller and Johnson on the back porch at the safety, Quentin Lake, Russ East developing, maybe Jason Taylor, who's kind of banged up right now. But everyone's been talking about go out and sign a veteran edge rusher. And who's out there? Who's left? Robert Quinn's gone. He got busted for a hit and run. Melvin Ingram, he had 7 sacks last year. He's 34. He was with the Dolphins a year ago. But in 11 seasons, he's only had double-digit sacks twice. My guys that cover the Chargers, Tim and Dwayne at Mid-Valley Sports, they weren't high on Melvin Ingram. He's just a lot of talk, but you just don't see anything. Carlos Dunlap is available. Someone mentioned him. I like him. He had 5 sacks last year, but he's 34. And he's got a lot of tread on those tires. He's been in the NFL since 2010. How much does he have left to give you? So just stuff to think about there. All right, let's get to the trivia question of the day, because I really went long. I probably got to start trimming the show a little bit, but it is football season. There's more to talk about. If I go too long, send me a nasty note in the comment box. I'm happy to make an adjustment, because I don't want to lose the audience because I'm going too deep into the weeds. Okay, Kistler Law, Rams trivia question of the day. The Kistler Law, Rams trivia question of the day. How many USC quarterbacks have played a regular season game at quarterback for the Rams, right? How many USC quarterbacks have played a regular season game for the Rams? A, 10, B, 7, C, 2, D, 4, or E, 9? How many USC quarterbacks have played regular season games for the Rams? A, 10, B, 7, C, 2, D, 4, E, 9. This isn't going to be as easy as just going to Pro Football Reference and looking that thing up. Thank you, Mr. Youngblood. Okay, I'm Joe Terosian. I was a sports writer for 21 years, still am kind of, and now I do RamView and I write books. I've pushed my book here a little bit. Actually, I've written 7 books. This is one of my high school football novels. I encourage you to check it out. It's gotten some good reviews on Amazon. And I write from a Christian perspective because I write books, and I do this to supplement my income because I am the pastor of a small church in Burbank Faith Nazarene, and you could catch us right here on Burbank Faith Virtual. I thank Mr. Tim Burns for the push there that he gave me in one of the comments. But yeah, Burbank Faith Virtual is right here on YouTube and all across social media. And by doing RamView and writing books, that's how I supplement my income. Notice it's not a Patreon account. Okay, let's keep right on moving. If you're out there, please feel free to say hi. On this date, August 23rd in Rams history, this is my nerd spasm, okay? I'm going to call this the nerd spasm section. On this date in 1968, the Rams placed Harold Jackson on the reserve squad, the taxi squad essentially, and he ended up playing and appearing in 2 games for the team, but it was clear that George Allen wasn't a big fan of Harold Jackson. In July of 1969, he was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles for a dude named Izzy Lang, who did nothing for them. And Jackson in 1969, after being on the Rams taxi squad in 68, getting traded for a nobody in 69, that year in 1969, he caught 65 passes for 1,116 yards. He averaged 17 yards a catch. Now, for his career, he averaged 17.9 yards a catch. He scored 9 touchdowns, and he did all that with his quarterback, who was Norm Snead. You guys remember Norm Snead, right? Norm Snead was like the Steve DeBerg, the Jacoby Brissett of the 1960s and 70s. He played everywhere, and he had his longest run was in Philly. I kind of liked him. He was from Wake Forest. But, yeah, he hit Harold Jackson for 65 passes, 1,100 yards, and 9 touchdowns. What a breakout year for Harold Jackson. Now, put that same date in 1971, the Rams waive a small little receiver, probably too small and too slow, named Randy Vataha. He goes on later in his career, becomes an agent, part of the USFL, all that stuff. He had a successful life. But he was drafted by the Rams real late, 16th, 17th round, something like that, 18th round, whatever, out of Stanford. And on this date, August 23rd, 1971, the Rams waived him. 9 days later, he's signed by the New England Patriots. That season, he has the best season of his career. He catches 51 passes for a 17-yard per catch average, scores 9 touchdowns. His quarterback was his college teammate, Jim Plunkett. Something about the eval system, right? In the Allen era, the Pro Throw era, Elroy Hirsch still working as a GM there for a while, that the Rams put Harold Jackson in the street. Well, not in the street. They trade him for nothing. He catches 65 passes the next year. And then they put Randy Vataha, who there probably was no room for Randy Vataha. I get it. But they put him in the street, and he catches 51 passes as a rookie for 17 yards a catch and 9 touchdowns. Pretty interesting. On this date in 1978, the Rams released Art Toms. Now, Art Toms, I only remember him as a Raider, and that's really all he was, essentially, except for a cup of coffee with the Eagles. But I didn't even know the Rams had him in camp. I had to look this one up. Art Toms was a first-round pick, 22nd overall by the Raiders out of Syracuse. He was 6'5", 260, and he was just one of those nasty-looking Raiders of the early 70s. But here's the bummer for Art Toms. As he played with them through 69 through 75, you know, the losses, right? The Franco catch in 72, he was there. The loss to the Dolphins in 73, the loss to the Steelers in 74 and 75. He injures his knee in September of 76 and misses the rest of the season when they go to the Super Bowl and beat the Vikings at the Rose Bowl in Super Bowl 11. Tragic career. He ends up getting traded to the Eagles in 77. He plays a few games with them. He gets cut, and he signs with the Rams in July of 78 and is cut on this day in 1978. He had 30 career sacks as Pro Football Reference does. They go back and look at the highlights, and they put the sack count in there for some of these players before sacks became an official statistic. Okay, and finally, in 2010, little more current history here. Does anyone remember a large, tall receiver for the Rams named Denario Alexander? He was an undrafted free agent out of Missouri. He was 6'5", 217. He had a great length. He actually made some big plays. In fact, I remember my friend Dwayne and I saying, man, looks like the Rams finally found somebody, but he had a perpetual knee problem. He injured that knee in the Senior Bowl and prepped for the Senior Bowl, so he goes undrafted. He came to the Rams 2010. He's cut, signed to the practice squad, and he's brought up in October that year, catches 4 passes for 37 yards, and including a touchdown pass from Sam Bradford. Over 2 years with the Rams, 2010, 2011, he caught 46 passes, and he was just one of those guys, recurring injuries, bad knee. Finally, in 2012, he catches on with the Chargers, and he catches 37 passes for them, but the injuries forced him to retire early after playing just 26 games. He's hardly Bucky Pope, but he was just one of those guys in a real bleak period in Ram history. I mean, that was the darkest of the dark periods because there was so much behind and so much ahead that you had to wait for to see something good happen. Denario Alexander was a guy that briefly, very briefly, for me and my friends, gave us a little hope, but it didn't happen. I think he's living in Houston, doing some coaching, doing some foundational work now with youth. Good dude. Wanted to get that in there. And finally, regular season, week 5, Rams and Eagles. Eagles at Rams, October 8th, 2023. Eagles lead this series all-time 21-18-1, including an NFL title win. I projected this as a loss in the spring when the schedule came out. I projected this a loss when we looked at the defenses. And now we're going to look at the Eagles offense. The Eagles lost their guys, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Javon Hargrave, Gardner Minshew, Isaac Seumalo, Miles Sanders to the Panthers, TJ Edwards. They signed Marcus Mariota as a backup. He's not playing well. I wouldn't be surprised if Tanner McKee gets that job. And they got Rashad Penny, the old Norrock guy that we saw play in high school, one of the 2 best high school players I ever saw. They drafted Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Sidney Brown, Keely Ringo, Tanner McKee, and Moro Ojomo, who was hurt last week. Their secondary is deep. They're solid at safety. They brought back Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. They got Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, and, of course, Nolan Smith. The Eagles should be 4-0. They're going to play the Pats, the Vikings, the Bucks, and the Texans by the time they get to SoFi. They should be 4-0, and they should be 5-0 when they leave. This is a team that, you're running Jalen Hurts at quarterback. Now, I might not be 100% sold on Jalen Hurts all the time, but Jalen Hurts has all these weapons around him, and he's a good dude, right? In the sense that he's professional. He works hard. You can see he's a leader. He's just like Lamar Jackson. He might not be your cup of tea, but as those of us are usually wanting traditional quarterbacks, but Jalen Hurts is somebody you got to respect. And then you add DeAndre Swift. He's still got Dallas Goedert. He's got A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. And then you throw in an offensive line of Lane Johnson at right tackle, Jason Kelsey at center, Landon Dickerson at left guard, and Jordan Mailata. And Mailata is the rugby guy, right? He was drafted 7th round, 233 overall in 2018 from Australia, no college, 6'8", 365. And he was graded the 9th best tackle in the NFL last year out of 81 that were graded. This Eagle team is looking really good. They are going to have to be the author of their own destruction before anyone gets an edge on them. We'll see. I do not see the Rams winning this game, not in the least. So by other projections, stealing a game in Cincy, which I'm not 100% sold on, and winning the game in Indy. I see the Rams losing in Seattle and at home against Frisco, now falling to Philly. I see them 2-3 after 5 weeks in this season. So there we go. Man, 44 minutes. That's where I was yesterday.
My man.
Okay. If you feel like I need to shorten the show, say, Joe, shorten the show. Let's do the Kistler Law Rams trivia question of the day. And that question was, how many USC quarterbacks have played a regular season game for the Rams? How many USC quarterbacks have played in a regular season game for the Rams? A, 10, B, 7, C, 2, D, 4, E, 9. You could drop your answer in there if you want. I'll take a sip of my agua. Gets warm in the Ram cave. If I have the air conditioning on, I don't have central air in here. If I turn the air conditioning on, you think my aesthetics and my microphone and my lack of professionalism is bad now. Wait till you hear the air conditioner in the background. So yeah, I'm sweating here. I'm going to give you a minute. Drinking some water. Okay. How many USC quarterbacks have played a regular season game at quarterback for the Rams? Was it A, 10, B, 7, C, 2, D, 4, E, 9? Drum roll, please. The answer is D, 4. Only 4 USC quarterbacks have played quarterback for the Rams and thrown an actual pass. Now, you could say 5, but Scott Tinsley was in camp with the Rams. He never threw a pass. Those quarterbacks are Pat Hayden, believe it or not, the last USC quarterback to throw a pass for the Rams. Pete Beathard, a guy named Rudy Bukic, you might remember that name, and then Jim Hardy. He was out of USC, and of course, he was out of USC, and he was the Rams' first-round draft pick in 1945. The year after, Bob Waterfield was the 5th-round pick out of UCLA, and it was Waterfield who led the Rams to the Super Bowl, not the Super Bowl, the NFL title in 45. But can you imagine that? All these years in this town, the Rams have only had 4 USC quarterbacks: Pat Hayden, Pete Beathard, Jim Hardy, and Rudy Bukic. And literally, Pat Hayden has been retired for 42 years. The Rams have not had a USC quarterback throw a pass for them. Interesting stuff. All right. God bless. Take care. We're going to get out of here. I want to thank you all for the support you've given us, all those that are clicking on, all those that have hit like and comment and subscribe. If you have any questions, let me know. And please check us out on Spotify. Like and subscribe there. Our presence there is very, very weak. We're doing much better here. But thank you again for your support. Thanks for watching RamView. We will see you Friday. God bless.